When the alien Valkyrie's own people marked her dead, a human soldier heard her heartbeat beneath the wreckage and refused to believe the beautiful lie. Her name was already glowing in the Hall of Names. Her commanders had sealed her fate. But Captain Caleb Hayes saw one thing no empire could erase. She was still breathing. And in a galaxy ruled by honor, that small human mercy would become an act of rebellion. Welcome to Intergalactic Untold. We hope you enjoy this story. Have a day filled with happiness. And now, let us begin the journey. Hrafnfall fell out of orbit like a cathedral that had mistaken obedience for faith. Its lower hull burned in long orange seams against the black sky, shedding molten fragments into the blizzard turning over the ice world below. Inside the ceremonial deck, Commander Lyra Vale lay pinned beneath a fallen oath pillar while her own shrine wrote her obituary across her cracked visor in calm blue glyphs. Ritually concluded. Her suit disagreed in smaller, less beautiful numbers. Heartbeat active. Neural response unstable. Oxygen demand rising. Pain signatures severe. Alive, by every honest measure. Dead, by Esker law. That difference held up an empire. Valkyries were not supposed to be rescued by outsiders. They returned standing, or the war singers sealed their names in the hall and taught children to call the silence noble. The war singers did not fear death. They feared a living Valkyrie who proved the song had lied. Lyra knew that better than anyone. She had carried soldiers through burning corridors, memorized the names of the ones who made it out, and fed those names into the black crescent arcs along her back. Not wings. Never wings. Memory blades. A bioelectric oath frame of rank codes, rescue signatures, battlefield vows, and promises too old to survive translation. Now one crescent lay snapped 10 feet away, sparking weakly across the tilted deck. Another twitched against her spine as the oath pillar crushed her lower frame into the floor. Snow hissed through a torn bulkhead, melted on her blue skin where her helmet seal had split, then froze again along her collar. Her breath came thin, controlled, unforgiven. Above her, the shrine repeated its verdict. Ritually concluded. Clean words. Useful words. Words that would travel home before her body did. Her house would accept them because houses preferred beautiful endings to complicated survivors. Her commanders would polish them because a wounded Valkyrie dragged out by foreign hands would crack too many old mirrors. Lyra reached for the calm bead at her throat, then stopped. If she called, they would not come for her. They would come for the record. Her fingers closed instead around the broken knife at her belt. The blade slid free halfway, jagged and almost useless. Enough. A vibration rolled through the deck. The pillar shifted a fraction of an inch, and white pain cut across her vision. She swallowed the sound before it could become a plea. Then another sound entered the shrine. Not Esker boots. Too heavy. Not a drone. Too uneven. Someone moved through the shattered corridor one careful step at a time, pausing whenever the ship groaned, muttering flat Terran profanity through a damaged mask filter. A white beam crossed the wall of names, the frost, the spilled prayer chains, and finally found her face. The human in the doorway wore a battered rescue harness over combat fatigues, helmet scarred, one glove wrapped with emergency tape. Captain Caleb Hayes did not look like a myth. He looked tired, cold, and far too alive to be standing inside a chamber already declared empty. His light dropped the moment it touched her eyes. That small courtesy irritated her more than fear would have. His radio crackled with a distant woman's voice. Hayes, report. He did not answer. He looked at the blue verdict above her, then at the biometrics still fighting beneath it. His jaw tightened once. Lyra forced the knife higher, though her arm shook. Come closer, human, and I will teach your blood to kneel. Caleb unslung a portable oxygen stabilizer from his belt. He did not rush her. He did not reach for her. He slid the device across the tilted floor until it stopped within her grasp, then backed away with both hands open. You can hate me after you breathe. The stabilizer hummed, ugly and practical and alive. Lyra stared at him through the cracked visor, waiting for pity, triumph, possession, anything she could despise cleanly. He gave her none of it. He turned his eyes toward the broken ceiling while she dragged the device to her suit port with shaking fingers. The green seal locked. Air entered her lungs like an insult that wanted her to survive. Outside, Hrafnfall tore another piece of itself loose into the storm. Inside, a dead woman kept breathing, and one human had already decided the shrine was wrong. Caleb waited until the oxygen seal held steady before he moved again. The stabilizer's green pulse reflected in Lyra's cracked visor, small and stubborn against the blue death verdict still glowing above her. His radio came alive inside his helmet. Hayes, report. I've got thermal bloom across docking spine 3. Lieutenant Dana Park's voice carried engine noise, static, and the thin patience of someone flying too close to a falling shrine. Before Caleb could answer, another voice cut through, older and sharper. Captain Hayes, this is Colonel Mercer. Esker Command has classified that chamber as cleared. You are ordered back to extraction. Caleb looked at Lyra's biometrics. Heartbeat, neural fire, oxygen uptake, pain. Then he looked at the words calling her finished. Chamber's not empty. The Esker record says otherwise. Caleb pulled a compact plasma cutter from his thigh rig and checked the charge. 38%. His thumb hovered over the transmit key. For half a second, another sealed room rose behind his eyes. Fort Carson Annex. A pressure door. His brother's voice going thin over a training channel while Caleb waited for clearance like a good soldier. The official report had been clean enough to bury a family under. Caleb switched his radio to receive only. The sudden quiet felt less like rebellion than a door finally opening. Lyra watched the motion with narrowed silver-violet eyes. Your commander pulls his leash. Caleb crouched outside the reach of her broken knife. He can pull. You disobey him for an enemy already named dead. I disobey bad information. He set the cutter near the first support bracket of the oath pillar. White light hissed against black metal. The pillar was not just heavy. It was ceremonial weight made physical, carved with old victories, dead commanders, and promises that had apparently never included coming back for the inconvenient living. Lyra's fingers tightened around the knife. You do not understand what you insult. Probably not. He killed the cutter before the bracket fully gave. So tell me we're not to cut. She stared at him. Leave me. That's not a latch number. Human. Captain, technically. But if you want to insult me with accuracy, I'll earn it later. The deck shuddered. Snow burst through the torn bulkhead in a white gust. Caleb kept his hands visible, cutter low. No grabbing. No heroic reach. Just the ugly patience of rescue work. There's a frame under your left hip. If I lift wrong, I make this worse. Blue seal? Black cable? Something I should avoid. Lyra looked at the oath pillar, then at him, as if measuring whether hatred could survive usefulness. Lower crescent lock, she said at last. Left side. Beneath the blue seal. Do not cut the black cable. Blue seal. Black cable stays alive. It is not alive. Neither was that screen, apparently. Her eyes sharpened, but she did not correct him. Caleb found the seal under a sheet of frost and cleared it with his thumb. The latch was half crushed, too sacred to be practical, too old to release without being convinced. He slid a thermal lift pad beneath the pillar's edge, then wedged a rescue jack into the carved gap. When I raise it, pull back 6 inches. Real inches, not warrior inches. I know how to move injured. Great. Then we'll both pretend this is going smoothly. He triggered the jack. The pillar rose half an inch and screamed like the shrine itself objected. Lyra dragged herself free with one hand. Jaw locked so hard the pain had nowhere to go. Caleb reached by instinct, stopped before touching her, and let his hand fall open between them instead. Her gaze flicked to it. She refused it. He accepted that without a word. The thermal pad split. The pillar crashed down, shaking blue dust from the ceiling. Lyra rolled clear, breath ragged, broken knife still in hand. Caleb picked up the snapped crescent from the floor and placed it within her reach, hilt first. She did not thank him. She took it anyway. Park's voice broke through the receive channel, sharp now. Hayes, docking spine 3 just folded. Your return path is gone. Tell me you're not still inside. Caleb looked down the ruined corridor where the extraction route had become a wall of collapsed bronze and ice. Beyond it, another passageway flickered with pale memorial light. Lyra followed his gaze, and something colder than pain crossed her face. The Hall of Names, she said. For honored dead. Caleb glanced at the verdict above her one last time, then back at the corridor. Then they're using it wrong. The Hall of Names opened before them with the silence of a place designed to make grief behave. Its archway had cracked during the fall, but the chamber beyond still glowed with thousands of vertical light etchings suspended in pale blue fire. Each name floated inside its own narrow column, clean and steady, untouched by smoke, frost, or the screaming metal around it. Caleb stepped in first, scanner raised, boots crunching over a thin skin of ice. Lyra followed with one hand braced against the wall, and the broken crescent held low like a cane she hated kneading. The memory blades along her back ticked softly, misfiring whenever her injured frame caught wrong. Caleb heard every sound and pretended not to count them. "This place gives me church basement vibes," he said. Colder. More judgment. "It is not a church." "Then it's overachieving." Lyra did not answer. Her gaze had locked on the newest row of names near the far wall. Caleb followed it and found hers glowing there, already polished into history. Lyra VL. Commander. Ritually concluded aboard Hrafnfall. No mention of the oath pillar. No oxygen timer. No broken frame dragging itself through a dying shrine. No human standing beside her with a rescue scanner and 38% cutter charge. Just a clean line built to travel home without making anyone uncomfortable. Caleb felt his jaw tighten. He did not touch the wall. He understood, somehow, that pity would stain the moment. "That's the official version?" Lyra's face stayed still, which made the answer worse. "It is the useful version." "Useful to who?" "Houses that need their daughters brave. Commanders who need their soldiers obedient. War singers who turn endings into architecture." She looked at the blue fire around her name. A living Valkyrie rescued by foreign hands is difficult to sing. Caleb watched the glyphs shimmer like they had never lied before. "The wall's wrong." Lyra's eyes shifted to him. For once, she had no blade pointed at his throat, no insult ready. Only a narrow kind of attention, sharp and unwilling. Before she could speak, the calm bead at her collar snapped awake. Esker voices spilled into the hall in layered harmony, formal enough to sound dead already. "Commander Lyra Vale, if conscious, stand down. Your record is sealed. Preserve conclusion. Human interference is unauthorized." Caleb looked up at the ceiling as if he might find a speaker to punch. "Preserve conclusion. That's one hell of a way to say stay dead." Another voice entered, older, smooth with public grief. "Your house accepts completion. Your name has been honored. Do not permit extraction." Lyra's fingers moved to the bead. For a breath, she did not crush it. The blue glow painted her alien features in ceremonial calm, making her look exactly like the kind of symbol they wanted: beautiful, wounded, silent. Then her hand closed. The bead cracked under her gauntlet. Sparks scattered down her armor and died on the floor. "My house has always been generous with what others must carry," she said. Caleb said nothing. The hall did not deserve more sound than that. A tremor passed through Hrafnfall, and several names flickered. His scanner redrew the route, losing docking spine 3 completely and marking a lift shaft at the far end. "Exits through there." "Honor lift," Lyra said. "Built to lower the worthy." "Does it check personality, or just weight?" "It was built for bodies. Bodies are easier to schedule." She gave him a sideways look, faint and severe. "You speak when afraid. Mostly when awake." They moved through the hall together, not fast, not gracefully, but with a shared understanding neither had agreed to out loud. Caleb scanned the ceiling for stress fractures. Lyra scraped ice from the floor with the broken crescent where his boots might slip, pretending it was not help. Halfway across, his glove brushed a column of blue fire, and the names rippled outward. Lyra's obituary dimmed once, then returned, as if the shrine had corrected itself too quickly. Caleb saw it. So did she. Neither spent the moment on hope. At the far end, the honor lift waited inside a black metal frame glazed with frozen prayer frost. Caleb wiped the control panel clean with his sleeve. Lyra set her palm beside his scanner light, close enough for the reflections to overlap but not touch. The panel woke in amber. Behind them, her name continued to glow among the dead. Ahead, the lift doors opened like a mouth that had not expected living passengers. The lift doors closed behind them with a soft ceremonial chime, as if Hrafnfall still believed good manners could survive structural failure. Caleb stood near the control panel, one hand on the emergency brake, scanner angled toward the shaft beyond the walls. Lyra stood opposite him, shoulders squared despite the way her injured frame trembled under the armor. The amber lights crawled over her cracked memory blades and turned the broken crescents into something almost holy. Caleb did not look at them for long. Holy things had been making bad decisions all morning. The lift began to move. For 3 seconds, it descended smoothly. Then the floor dropped out from under them. Caleb's stomach hit his throat. Lyra slammed one hand into the wall and caught herself without a sound. The lift fell 20 feet, maybe 30, before ancient brake teeth screamed into the shaft and stopped them hard enough to drive Caleb to one knee. The lights flashed red. Somewhere above, something heavy tore loose and plunged past the lift in a blur of black metal and blue sparks. "This machine is failing," Lyra said. Caleb pushed himself upright, breathing through the pain in his left shoulder. "I was hoping that was just its personality." He ripped open the service panel with his knife. Burned insulation and frozen dust spilled out. The diagram inside showed 3 brake housings. One was gone. One was cracked. The last blinked weakly like a tired witness. Below them, the shaft ran down into darkness, crossed by maintenance rungs and old ceremonial cables glazed with frost. His scanner marked a lower service gallery 200 feet beneath the lift. Past that, the route to transfer Gallery 9 still existed in broken red segments. "We climbed down," he said. Lyra looked at the rungs through the shattered side glass. "My lower frame will not carry that descent." "Then we don't make it carry the descent." Caleb pulled an emergency rescue cable from the wall, tested the weave, and clipped one end to his harness. He held the second clip out on an open palm, not stepping closer. "Your call." Lyra studied the clip like it had insulted her bloodline. "If I take this, I owe you nothing." "Perfect. Debt makes people weird." Her translator clicked once, possibly offended on her behalf. Then she took the clip and locked it beneath her upper shoulder guard, using only her own hands. The lift groaned. The last brake housing cracked halfway across its face. Caleb kicked the side glass release. Cold air punched into the cabin, sharp with smoke and reentry frost. "On 3. A childish count." "Great. You'll understand it." Her eyes narrowed. "1," he said. The brake screamed. 2. The floor tilted. 3. Caleb swung out first, boots finding the maintenance rungs, cable running hot across his glove. Lyra followed above and to his left, moving with brutal precision. Every shift of weight measured before pain could turn it into noise. Frost blew upward around them in pale ribbons. Raffenfall shuddered, and the whole shaft bent with a sound too deep to be metal alone. Twice Lyra slipped. Twice Caleb locked his knees and took the shock through the cable, biting down hard enough to taste blood behind his teeth. On the third impact, his left shoulder struck a rung, and his grip opened for half a second. Lyra saw it. "Transfer load to me. Your frame's damaged." "My lower frame is damaged. My upper frame is angry." "That's not a load rating. It is the only one you have." The brake housing above them snapped another tooth. Caleb looked up at her through the flying frost. There was no softness in her face, no gratitude, no surrender. Only a commander offering physics her remaining strength because survival had become a shared problem. He shifted part of the cable tension to her shoulder hardpoint. Pain flashed across her expression and vanished under discipline. Together, they descended, ugly and alive. Not rescuer and rescued. Not hero and burden. 2 damaged soldiers forcing a dying shrine to make room for one more breath. When Caleb's boots finally hit the lower gallery, his knees nearly folded. Lyra dropped beside him on one knee, broken crescent scraping the grated floor, cable still locked between them. Above, the honor lift tore free and vanished down the shaft. Its crash arrived late, distant and final. Caleb lay back against the cold grating for one breath too long. Lyra coiled the cable with precise, furious care and nudged the end toward his good hand. "Stand when you can, Captain Hayes," she said. "Not before." He turned his head toward her, too tired for a joke. At the far end of the lower gallery, a Terran emergency beacon pulsed red through the smoke, and beyond it, a narrow maintenance artery waited without prayers, without names, without beautiful lies. The maintenance artery beyond the lower gallery had none of Raffenfall's ceremonial grace. No blue names, no carved oaths, no polished pillars pretending weight was the same as meaning. Just cracked coolant pipes, breaker boxes, torn insulation, and warning labels half buried under frost. Caleb trusted it more than any holy room they had crossed. Machines lied less when nobody asked them to sing. The Terran beacon pulsed somewhere ahead on his scanner, then vanished, then returned in broken red fragments. Transfer Gallery 9 was still reachable if the shrine stopped folding around them out of spite. Lyra moved behind him with the rescue cable coiled over one arm and the broken crescent held low in the other. Her steps were controlled, but not clean. Every few yards, the metal under her left side clicked wrong. Every time, Caleb kept walking half a pace slower without looking back. She knew. He knew she knew. Neither made it an insult. A tremor rolled through the passage, dimming the lights to a bruised amber. Caleb spotted a manual hatch recessed into the wall. "We take 3 minutes." Lyra's eyes cut toward the smoke gathering overhead. "We do not have 3. Then we steal them. You treat time like contraband. It keeps showing up where it shouldn't." He shoved the hatch open with his shoulder and swept the room with his helmet light. A service alcove, barely bigger than a closet. Spare conduit. Emergency blankets. One dead shrine lantern swinging from a chain. Solid walls. No names. Good enough. Lyra entered and turned so her back did not face the door. Caleb took the opposite wall without comment. Soldier habits needed no translation. He dropped to one knee, pulled a compact heat cell from his pack, and tried to twist the core open. His left hand shook. Once. Twice. The cap slipped, struck the deck, and rolled to Lyra's boot. The little sound filled the room more than it should have. She looked down at it, then at his fingers. "Your arm is failing. It's making a strong argument. Your humor has poor medical value. It's cheap." He reached for the cap, slower this time. His glove seal had darkened near the wrist where coolant leaked through the tape. Lyra did not pick up his hand. She did not offer comfort. She picked up the cap and set it on the floor between them, closer to his good side. A corrected distance. Nothing more. Caleb took it. "Thanks." The floor was untidy. Right. The heat cell finally opened. Orange warmth spread across the alcove, touching his boots, her cracked armor, the cable between them. For a while, the only sound was the cell's low hum and Hrafnfall's old bones complaining around them. Then Lyra said, "You are afraid." Caleb kept his eyes on the heat cell. "Yeah. You entered a collapsing shrine alone. Still afraid. You defied your commander. Afraid then, too." Her gaze stayed on him, severe and exact. Not pity. Investigation. Caleb pulled med tape from his kit and wrapped his wrist tighter than necessary, giving his hands something to survive. "My brother got trapped in a training lockout at Fort Carson Annex faulty pressure door. I was squad lead." The tape creased under his thumb. "Command told me to wait for clearance." Lyra's face did not soften. "That made it easier." "You waited." Caleb nodded once. "The report said I followed protocol." The heat cell hummed between them, small and orange and honest. "Did that comfort you?" she asked. "It comforted the people who wrote it." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, alien and cold-lit and less distant than before. Then she braced the heat cell with her gauntlet so he could lock the core using his good hand. Their fingers did not touch. The space between them did the work. The cell clicked steady. Caleb let out a breath he had not meant to hold. "You could have said you needed help," she said. "You could have said you needed rescue." Her mouth did not move, but something in her eyes shifted. That would have made the room unbearable. His radio cracked alive before he could answer. Park's voice came through thin with static and engine strain. "Ace, if you're still breathing, I've got your beacon near Transfer Gallery 9. Pickup window is 11 minutes before reentry shear cuts the approach. Tell me you've got movement." Caleb touched his mic. 2 survivors moving. A pause. 2. He looked at Lyra as she rose, slowly, cable in hand, broken crescent angled toward the hatch. "Yeah," he said, "and neither one's a record." Lyra nudged the cable toward his good hand. "Stand, Captain Hayes." He took it and pushed himself upright. "That formal now. Survive 11 minutes, she said, and I will decide what name fits." They stepped back into the maintenance artery together, not healed, not safe, but moving with a rhythm no order had given them. The maintenance artery narrowed until Caleb had to turn his shoulders sideways, scraping his rescue harness against frost-caked conduit. Lyra followed close enough for the rescue cable between them to stay useful, far enough that neither body mistook survival for permission. Ahead, the Terran beacon pulsed through Caleb's scanner, steady now, just beyond one final chamber. "Almost there," he said. "Humans say that when lost. We also say it in parking lots." Your species appears poorly designed for navigation, but weirdly committed to snacks. The passage opened into a black bronze antechamber untouched by smoke. That was the first warning. The walls were clean. The floor was polished. A sealed door filled the far side, its surface marked by 3 crescent blades circling a white star. Fine sensor veins ran through the metal like frozen lightning. Lyra stopped before Caleb did. Her broken crescent lowered toward the floor. Vow-door. Caleb looked at the star, then at her face. Bad lock. Old lock. Worse. She stepped closer, and the pale veins in the door answered the damaged oath frame along her back with a faint blue shimmer. It guards the reliquary route to Gallery 9. Only oath-active Valkyries may pass. You're standing right here. I am also dead. The words landed flat, not dramatic, which made them harder to argue with. Caleb scanned the reader plate beside the door. What does it check? Genetic rank. Neural oath pattern. Memory blade continuity. The door was built after the first house purges, when false commanders wore stolen armor and led whole wings into traps. So it's paranoid with a resume. It is usually correct. Today's been rough on usually. Lyra placed her palm on the reader. Blue light crawled over her gauntlet, climbed her wrist, and struck the cracked memory blades along her spine. The door hummed with ancient confidence. Glyphs burned across the plate. Lyra VL. Commander. Ritually concluded. Access denied. The chamber became very quiet. Hrafnfall groaned somewhere beyond the walls, but inside the vow-door's clean little room, the rejection sounded louder than collapse. Lyra kept her palm there. Not begging. Not pleading. Refusing to remove the evidence. Caleb looked at the broken crescent in her other hand, its contact spine sparking weakly where the metal had snapped. That thing carries oath data, right? Her eyes shifted. Rank codes. Rescue signatures. Neural vow traces. Bioelectric continuity from every blade in the frame. And you used it after they marked you finished. I used it to stand. That counts. Machines do not care what counts. Caleb held out his good hand, palm open. Mine usually care after you annoy them correctly. That is not engineering. Field engineering. Very respected by people with no other options. Lyra stared at his hand, then at the crescent. Trust did not arrive like warmth. It arrived like a weapon turned sideways. She placed the broken blade across his glove, careful of the edge, careful of what the gesture meant. Caleb did not grip it like a trophy. He guided its jagged contact spine toward the reader beside her palm. The door's light flickered once. Come on, he murmured. Update your file. The reader flashed white. Oath signal detected. Conflicting status. Lyra's breath caught. So small the room nearly missed it. Caleb kept the crescent steady as the reader drew current through the blade, through Lyra's palm, through the living neural pattern her own people had tried to archive. His biomonitor ticked too loud in his helmet, fast from pain, cold, and the knowledge that the shrine was running out of ship. The door scanned again. Oath contested. The sensor veins pulsed from blue to silver. For one impossible second, the glow along Lyra's temples answered Caleb's monitor in the same rhythm. Both saw it. Neither named it. A final line appeared. Oath active. The door opened 6 inches, then wider, releasing warmer air and the red blink of the Terran beacon beyond. Lyra did not move at first. Her palm stayed on the reader until the words faded, as if proof needed pressure to remain real. Caleb lowered the crescent and offered it back hilt first. Looks like the dead don't get final say. She took the blade. No, she said, stepping through the vow-door alive. Only the loudest one. Transfer Gallery 9 opened beneath Hrafnfall's outer ribs, a long crescent chamber built for departures that were never supposed to include rescue. Honor pods lined the docking rail like narrow black coffins, their polished surfaces reflecting emergency red, shrine gold, and the white-blue planet swelling beyond the cracked outer doors. Reentry fire crawled across the hull seams. Every few seconds, the whole gallery shuddered as the atmosphere took another bite out of the falling shrine. Caleb crossed to the Terran beacon and slapped his palm over the activation plate. Park, we're at Gallery 9. Static tore through his helmet. Then Lieutenant Dana Park answered, voice tight under engine strain. I see your ping. I'm coming in low, but listen very carefully. My starboard magnetic clamp is cracked. I can take one secured load through that wake. 1. If mass shifts, I lose attitude control. Caleb looked at the honor pods, then at Lyra. Define attitude control. Define funeral. Park exhaled hard over the channel. Pod mass plus 1 occupant is stable. 2 bodies, unsecured transfer, or overloaded clamp. And we all become a physics lesson, no one survives. Lyra touched the nearest pod's frame with 2 fingers. Its surface woke beneath her hand, then hesitated, reading her as both commander and record error. Your pilot is correct. Caleb opened the pod service panel and scanned the old Esker wiring. That's becoming an annoying trend. One secured load is not mercy, Lyra said. It is physics. He looked at her then, because hearing her say it made the plan worse, not easier. The chamber buckled somewhere behind them. A lantern tore free, rolled across the floor, and shattered into blue glass. Caleb pulled the beacon cable from the console and began threading it through the pod's external loop. If Park's clamp caught the pod skin instead of shifting armor and limbs, the skiff might hold. Might was the best word the universe had left them. Lyra watched his hands. No, I haven't sold the plan yet. You become quiet when you are about to insult me. I'm wiring the beacon to the pod, and leaving yourself to the shrine. Caleb kept working because looking at her made the math feel like betrayal. You walk out alive, Craftfall's record breaks. You have the rank, the oath frame, the proof. You can make them answer. Do not dress abandonment as strategy. He stopped. The wire hung between his fingers. I'm not abandoning you. You are choosing what my survival means. That landed harder than the hull impacts. Caleb turned from the panel and stepped back from the open pod. No grabbing. No command voice. No soldier's trick dressed as kindness. Then choose with me. Park can hold 1 stable load. Not 2. If we both jump, we die. If I climb in with you, we overload the clamp. If we wait, this gallery burns off the hull. He swallowed. I hate every version. This is the one where somebody gets to argue later. Park cut in, closer now. 40 seconds. I need that pod on the rail. Lyra's eyes moved to the broken crescent in her hand, then to Caleb's biomonitor blinking on his wrist. The silver lines at her temples pulsed once, faintly echoing the rhythm from the vow-door. The blade, she said. Caleb frowned. What? Keep it. Its contact spine carries my active oath signal. If the pod reads me as remains again, the frame will still know where I am. And if I return, she did not finish. She did not need to. Caleb held out his hand. She placed the broken crescent across his glove, hilt first, not surrendering it, entrusting it to motion. He strapped it across his back beside the rescue cable. That's a lot of faith in my terrible posture. Do not drop it. Cleaner. The skiff's lights appeared beyond the outer doors, fighting through plasma haze and ice. Park shouted, 20 seconds. Caleb finished the beacon loop and opened the pod harness. Then he stepped aside. The choice sat in the chamber with them, cruel and honest. Lyra looked at the pod like it was an enemy she intended to survive out of spite. I will file several complaints. I'll pretend to be surprised. She climbed in herself, jaw tight, wounded frame dragging against the cradle. Caleb sealed the harness only after her hands left it. Fast. Precise. No ownership. Pod ready, he said. Where are you going? Park demanded. Caleb looked toward the service ladder bolted to the gallery's outer spine, half lit by fire, shaking with every atmospheric strike. Finding a route with character. Lyra's voice came through the pod channel, cold enough to cut the static. Caleb Hayes, if you make me survive as a clean report, I will ruin every archive your species owns. He slammed the manual release. The pod shot down the damaged rail. Outside, Park's skiff rolled hard, magnetic clamps screaming as it caught the pod with a thunderous snap. Caleb watched it lock, watched Lyra's cradle pull away into the storm, then turned toward the service ladder as the gallery doors began to buckle inward behind him. The skiff clawed away from Hrafnfall with Lyra's honor pod locked beneath it, the cracked magnetic clamps screaming through the hull like a machine arguing with physics. Inside the pod, Lyra lay strapped in ceremonial darkness while the planet's upper atmosphere burned white across the narrow glass. The cradle's glyphs woke beside her cheek. Recovered remains. She stared at the words until the cold in her chest became cleaner than fear. No, she said. That file is out of date. Park's voice snapped through the pod channel, wrapped in engine string. Commander, whatever you're thinking, don't. The clamp is one bad sneeze from becoming a memorial. Lyra looked past the glass. Craftenfall rolled behind them, huge and broken, its outer ribs peeling open in sheets of fire. Somewhere on that dying spine, Caleb Hayes was climbing with one damaged arm and her broken crescent strapped across his back. The pod read her as remains. The vow-door had not. Her oath frame pulsed along her spine, damaged crescents answering the one he carried. Oath active. Command rank verified. Bioelectric continuity unstable. Lyra slid 2 fingers under the pod's rank plate and twisted. Pain tore through her hip, so sharply the world narrowed to black edges and white breath. The panel cracked open. "Open your aft service hatch," she said. Park laughed once, without humor. "Absolutely not. Then I will exit through the pod glass. You are injured, half-frozen, and attached to my skiff by the world's angriest clamp. And your human is unsecured." Static filled the channel for half a second. "Yeah," Park said, quieter. "He's on emergency 3. Beacons moving along the outer service ladder. Not fast enough." Lyra pressed her palm to the exposed rank circuit. The pod rejected her first command. "Return protocol forbidden." Then the broken oath frame behind her flared, dragging the vow-door's verdict into the cradle's old military logic. Recovered remains conflicted with oath active. Dead things could not command. Active commanders could. The pod hesitated. Lyra leaned closer to the glowing plate. "Choose the file that can still complain." The harness released her right shoulder with a brutal click. Park swore so fast the translator gave up. "You two are the same kind of problem." "That is unlikely." "Trust me, blue lightning. It's exact." The skiff's aft hatch opened 6 feet, flooding the cargo bay with stormlight and reentry glare. Park had already clipped herself into a rescue frame, one hand on the controls, the other shoving a tether rig toward the pod as it slid inward along the clamp rail. "One pass," Park said. "I skim the spine. You hook him. If I miss, there's no second try." Lyra dragged herself from the pod and nearly fell when gravity remembered her wound. Park did not pity her. She slammed the tether clip into Lyra's armor and checked the lock like anger had made her hands holy. Craftenfall rushed closer through the open hatch, no longer a shrine, just a falling structure full of bad decisions. On the outer ladder, Caleb was a small dark shape against fire, one arm hooked through a rung, boots slipping on frost-turned steam. The broken crescent on his back flashed silver. Through it, Lyra felt his biomonitor as uneven pulses in her own oath frame. Fast, afraid, alive. The Esker called such resonance soul bond. The diagnostics called it synchronized bioelectric stress response. Both names were too small. Park drove the skiff into the wake. Fire rolled over the hull. "Hayes," she shouted over external speaker, "don't argue. Jump on my mark." Caleb's voice came back ragged with static. "That a rescue order or a bad idea?" Lyra stepped into the open hatch until the tether took her weight. "Both." For once, he had no answer. The ladder tore loose beneath him. Park screamed, "Mark!" Caleb jumped. Not like a hero in a war song. Like a frightened human choosing the hand reaching for him. Lyra caught his wrist with both hands. Impact ripped pain through her frame, bright and absolute. His glove slipped once. She locked her fingers over his pulse and refused the universe its neat ending. The tether snapped tight. Silver-white light surged from her temples, down the cracked memory blades, through the crescent on his back, matching his heart beat for beat. Caleb stared through his cracked visor. "Is that bad?" Lyra dragged him toward the hatch with everything she had left. "It is inconvenient." Park hauled them inside, and they hit the cargo deck in a tangle of cable, armor, smoke, and hard breathing. Behind them, Craftenfall split across the dawn, a sacred life finally running out of structure. Lyra kept Caleb's wrist in her hand 1 second longer than survival required. The light did not fade. Neither of them named it. The skiff climbed out of the upper atmosphere on one wounded engine, one cracked magnetic clamp, and Lieutenant Park's refusal to let physics have the final word. Caleb lay on the cargo deck with his back against a crate of thermal splints, helmet off, face pale beneath soot and thawing frost. Park had bound his left arm tight against his chest and threatened to sedate him if he kept making leadership choices with a concussion face. Lyra sat across from him on the deck because the med bench had restraints, and neither of them liked how those looked. Her armor still smoked faintly at the edges. The silver-white lines at her temples pulsed dimmer now, but steady. answering Caleb's wrist monitor every few beats with the quiet persistence of a signal that had survived too many systems trying to rename it. Through the rear viewport, Hrafnfall broke apart above the ice world in slow-burning fragments. Not glorious, not holy, just a machine of law and song failing to hold itself together after declaring the living convenient to lose. Caleb watched the last bright section fall into cloud. "Your shrine's gone," he said. Lyra looked toward the fading fire. "Only the part made of metal." He nodded once, as if the answer weighed more than his injury. The radio filled the cabin before silence could settle. Esker command came through in layered formal voices, each word polished enough to cut. "Commander Lyra Vale, you are ordered to submit to recovery custody upon landing. You have violated conclusion protocol, triggered unauthorized oath resonance, and exposed classified ceremonial infrastructure to Terran personnel. The human soldier and recovered Valkyrie blade will be surrendered for Warsinger review." Park turned halfway from the pilot's seat. "Recovered blade?" Caleb looked down at the broken crescent strapped near his side. "I'm guessing they don't mean lost and found." Lyra rose before he could move. Her injured leg nearly failed, but she caught herself on the cargo rail. Caleb's good hand shifted an inch, then stopped. He did not reach. She saw the restraint and accepted it without looking away from the console. That was the shape respect had taken between them. Help offered, never ceased. Lyra crossed the cabin one careful step at a time and placed her palm beside the transmitter. The glow at her temples reflected in the glass, making her alien face look carved from ice, starfire, and old refusal. "This is Commander Lyra Vale," she said. "Correction. I violated no oath with authority over the living." Static sharpened. "Your house accepted your completion. My house filed too early." Park made a small sound and hit it badly behind a cough. Caleb looked at the floor, but the corner of his mouth moved. The Esker voice cooled further. "The resonance must be examined. The human is not permitted to carry your blade." Lyra shut off the transmitter with one finger. The sudden quiet expanded through the skiff. No anthem, no judgment, just engine vibration, breath, and the soft pulse between her oath frame and Caleb's monitor. She returned to him and unfastened the broken crescent from his gear. For one breath, he thought she was taking it back before the landing made things worse. Instead, she reversed the hilt and laid the blade across his knees. Caleb did not touch it at first. "Among my people," Lyra said, voice low enough that no command channel could own it. "A Valkyrie gives her broken blade to the one who saw her unfinished and did not call her ruined." His eyes lifted to hers. "That going to cause trouble?" "Almost certainly." "You sure?" The pulse along her temples brightened once. "I have decided to update the file." Park exhaled from the cockpit. "For the record, I hate how much I like that." Caleb placed his good hand on the blade, open-palmed, careful with its weight, not gripping it like a prize. "I don't know your oath words." "Good," Lyra said, lowering herself beside him, not above, not behind, close enough that her shoulder nearly touched his splinted arm. "Humans would shorten them. Probably put them on a coffee mug. You would be punished." "Fair." Dawn spread thin and gold across the forward glass. Below waited hearings, angry houses, Terran reports, and Warsingers sharpening beautiful language to make survival sound illegal. None of it disappeared because two damaged soldiers had found each other in a falling shrine. But Lyra sat beside Caleb, not saved behind him, not claimed before him, and the broken blade rested between them like a promise neither culture owned alone. He had not conquered her world. He had simply refused to let a wall, a door, or a beautiful death record decide she was gone before she was finished living. And in a galaxy fluent in honor, that sounded dangerously human. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story touched you, leave your thoughts in the comments and tell us what moment stayed with you most. Subscribe to Intergalactic Untold for more emotional sci-fi stories, quiet human courage, and untold journeys across the stars.